Namaste and welcome to Sacred Shavasana. My name is Luke and today I would like to offer you an exploration of restorative yoga infused with the sacred practices of mantra, mudra and pranayama. For this practice you will need a number of props. No props, no restorative yoga. But don't panic if you think you don't have everything I have lined up here on the mat. I will give you a brief overview and let you know what you can use that you have at home to substitute certain props that I have right here. To begin, we need something to cover our eyes because we need to practice in darkness if we want to trigger relaxation. This could be an eye pillow or an eye mask like the ones you get on an airplane. You can also use a scarf, a washcloth, even a sock that's washed. Anything to cover your eyes that will give you some darkness and that doesn't put too much pressure on your eyeballs. Next, I'm going to be using 4 blocks. I really like the big bricks because they're very firm, sturdy, and give good support. But for other things like supporting the elbows and the wrists, I prefer more standardized blocks that are a bit softer. If you don't have 4 blocks, depending on the pose, sometimes pillows can be used, or blankets, or meditation cushions. There are many different options. I will be using 2 bolsters. This is usually the tricky part. If you only have 1 bolster, that's perfect. The second bolster can be substituted by rolled up blankets or duvet or number of beach towels, anything to create a similar shape. If you don't have a single bolster, you will need to create one. Something that could be useful is, for example, a cushion from the couch or a pillow around which you wrap 1 or more blankets or towels. The idea is to create a round or rectangular shape that is both firm, so it won't collapse when you rest your torso on top of it, but at the same time it should also be soft, that you don't feel any kind of pinching that may make you uncomfortable. Last but definitely not least, I have 3 blankets. I'm going to be using 2 Iyengar yoga blankets, the professional cotton ones. They measure 230 by 150 centimeters. Another standardized format is 200 by 150. If you don't have these, please use any blanket you can get your hands on. The third blanket I'm using is a different type of blanket. It's the blanket I will be using to cover myself with, because we will be spending some time in lying in the poses and without movement, so our body temperature will drop. And if we are cold, we won't be able to relax. So please have another blanket to cover yourself with. If you need to take a moment to gather your things, please pause the video and get everything together. I'd rather you take some time now to get your kit together than that you have to get up in the middle of our practice because you're missing a prop. What you can never have enough of is blankets. So if you don't have enough bolsters or blocks or both, please grab as many blankets as you can, and also pillows, meditation cushions, or more blocks if you have them, so that you can have a wonderful restorative experience with maximum optimal support. As soon as you have everything with you, we'll begin by folding our blankets, because as you can see, these are folded in a particular way, and it will save time when we are setting up our poses. So to create this shape, please take your blanket and completely open it. Every blanket of these dimensions has a long side and a short side. So we take the long edge in between our hands, so we can fold the short edge of the blanket toward the opposite short edge of the blanket. We will do this a number of times. Once you have folded the short edge to the short edge of the blanket, we take the long edge between our hands again and fold the short edge to the short edge a second time. This will create a similar shape with a long edge and a short edge, and we will fold the blanket for a third time in the same way, short edge to short edge. And the shape you have created will hopefully look something like this, and we call this Padasana of the blanket. Now, for practical reasons, I am going to fold this one more time, short edge to short edge, and I call this a forward fold or Uttanasana of the blanket. Set your blankets aside. And because this session is themed Sacred Shavasana, like most sessions, we will open with the sacred sound of Om. 3 times, once for creation, once for sustenance, and once for dissolution or transformation. You can join the palms of the hands in front of the heart in Anjali Mudra if you like. Close your eyes to the degree of your comfort, or keep them open. Sit up straight. Feel how you can root yourself through the pelvis into the earth, and at the same time lengthen the spine all the way through the crown of the head up to the sky. Exhale and deep inhale for 3 times Om. Om. Keep your hands in Anjali Mudra. Rest your awareness in the flow of your breath. And if you want to set an intention for your practice, this is the moment to do so. Now let your hands rest in your lap. And please join me in chanting Asatoma Satgamaya together 3 times. Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotir Gamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Lead me from untruth to truth. Lead me from darkness to light. Lead me from death to immortality. Bhumi Sparsha Mudra. Bhumi means earth, and Sparsha means to lightly touch. Bhumi Sparsha Mudra, to lightly touch the earth. We let the left hand rest in our lap with the palm facing up, and we let the right wrist rest on our thigh or knee so that the fingertips lightly touch the earth. Now, because I'm sitting on some height, I cannot let my hand rest on my knee without compromising the integrity of the spine. So I'm going to let the arm rest on my thigh and simply touch the earth with my fingertips like this. Another variation of this mudra is placing the left hand on the heart and letting the right hand lightly touch the earth. Bhumi Sparsha Mudra is a seal of enlightenment and a reminder of the blessing energy of the earth. So we take Bhumi Sparsha Mudra and close our eyes for a moment, whichever variation you choose. And remind yourself that you and the earth share the same sacred, unchanging essence. Now I would like to balance our energies in the body by doing a simple pranayama practice, which is called Earth Sky Pranayama. We inhale the arms up to the sky, and we exhale the palms down to the earth. Follow the pattern of your own breath. Inhale, feel the expansive energy, and exhale, feel the grounding energy. Inhale, the flowering pattern of the breath, and exhale, the rooting pattern of the breath. Inhale to the sky, remembering the earth, and exhale to the earth, remembering the sky. Now we'll match our breathing pattern with some spinal movements, because I have found that sometimes it's not so easy to get onto the mat and immediately lie down for deep relaxation. Especially if we haven't moved much all day, maybe you've been sitting at a desk. In any case, it doesn't hurt to move the spine a little bit and connect that movement, that spinal articulation, with your breath. So on an inhale, extend the spine, and exhale, flex the spine. A couple of times. Inhale, arch, and exhale, round. 3 more. And move at your own pace. Maybe you make it more dynamic. Maybe you move more slowly, depending on how you feel. And then we move into circumduction, first moving to the left, the lunar side, and then we change directions to the right, the solar energy. Always creating balance. Come back to center. We move into lateral flexion or side bending. Inhale the arms up to the sky, and exhale, bend to the left, touch the earth, and open up the right side body. Inhale up to center, reach up to the sky, and exhale, bend to the right, touch the earth, and open the left side body. Follow your own breath as you move between earth and sky. Once more to each side. Inhale, arms up. And now into rotation. Exhale, rotate to the left. Inhale to center. And exhale to the right. Go at your own pace. We meet in the middle. And now bring the arms parallel to the ground and go into a lateral gliding movement. Like seaweed in the ocean or grains on a field moving in the wind. And then come back to center. Inhale the arms up. Interlace the fingers, pointing the index fingers upward to the sky, left thumb over right. Uttara Bodhi Mudra. Breathe into the back body, and on an exhale, bring it down back into the heart. And we're ready for our first restorative yoga pose. Supported Supta Baddha Konasana. For this pose, you will need all of the props that you gathered. It can seem a bit daunting the first time you set it up, but I hope you will agree with me that once you're in the pose, it's definitely worth it. Begin by placing your eye cover near the top of your mat, so you don't have to look for it when you're in the pose. And then we take 2 blocks with which we will create a support for our bolster. The block at the top edge of the mat we place in what we call Padasana of the block, the highest position, and the second block in Dandasana, second position. Depending on the size of your blocks, you may need a third block, which you will then place in Shavasana of the block. But if you have these 2 big bricks, 2 will suffice. And the placement, the distance between the 2 blocks will also depend on the size and shape of your blocks. We use them to create a slant with our bolster. And the importance here is that it's pretty stable, so you can easily rest your torso on the bolster without feeling wonky. One way that may help to make it more stable is to tilt the top block so that it only touches the mat with one sharp edge, and the flat top of the block comes into contact with the flat edge of your bolster. If you don't have these blocks, you can also use a meditation cushion, or you could use, if you have more than 2 bolsters, you could also place another bolster in the opposite direction, creating a kind of cross shape. But you could even use cooking pots from the kitchen, say a big spaghetti pot for the high block and a smaller pot for the second block. Think of these poses and the setups that I'm showing you as more as principles and shapes than these specific items that I'm using to create the shape with. So this is the first part of our setup. These blocks I will use to rest my elbows on, so I'm placing them on either side of the mat in what I know from my body is right Dandasana position. These could be substituted by meditation cushions or other pillows, also by rolled up blankets. You can be creative with what you have on hand. The second bolster I'll be using to support the back of my knees. This could also be switched with rolled up blankets, as long as you can create a large enough diameter so you can support your knees. And then I'm going to use one rolled up blanket to support my ankles. And to create this roll, I'm going to begin in Padasana of the blanket. So if you folded your blankets 4 times, just open it up once. And then we take what we call the firm edge of the blanket, which is the side with one fold, as opposed to the side with all these layers, which we call the soft edge of the blanket. So we take the firm edge of the blanket and we fold it over about 1/3, so we can create a firm core of our roll, and then we roll it up tightly. If you happen to have a small or lean bolster like the ones I have here behind me, this could also be used to support your ankles. So I'm placing the roll at the bottom edge of my mat. And then we have another blanket which we'll use to support our head. There is a wonderful head support that you can create with 1 or 2 blankets, but it's a bit tricky. It needs a lot of instruction, so I'm not going into the details here. I have a video on my website, yogiluke.com, under Restorative Yoga, where you can see how to create that head support. Maybe you can have a look at that at another time. But for now, we're going to keep things simple, as this is already complicated enough if you've never done this before. So for the simple head support, you take your Uttanasana blanket, so Padasana, fold a 4th time into Uttanasana, and you take the firm corner, which only has 1 fold, you fold it toward the opposite corner, the soft corner, which has all the layers. This creates more or less a triangular shape, and we place this on top of our bolster. An important detail to mention is how we will support our head and neck with this blanket. And for that, you need to know what cervical vertebra 7 is, or better, where that is in your body. It's what we call an anatomical landmark, a bony landmark. And I'm going to show you from the side. If you lower your chin to your chest and you use your hand to palpate the back of your neck, you will find at the base of the neck that there is a bump. And in most bodies, this bump is created by cervical vertebra 7. Sometimes 6, but for reference sake, we'll just say C7 for short. And when you lie down on your bolster, we will make sure that C7 is supported by the bottom tip of your blanket, the one with the soft edges. This will create a support that will prevent us from collapsing in the neck and the chest. We want to keep things open so we can breathe freely. The top corner of your blanket you can use to support your skull at the occiput. Finally, we have a blanket to cover ourselves with. I'm going to open it so I don't have to do that when I'm already in the pose. I'm just going to place it so that you can still see me. Getting into the pose, we sit down in front of our bolster first, and we make sure that there is as little as possible space, as little space as possible between the sacrum and the bolster. So you can lean forward a bit and kind of scoot back on the mat. Make sure that this doesn't topple over. And once we've created touchdown with the bolster, we can see where the other props go. So start to straighten your legs and make sure that the second bolster or the roll or whatever you created really supports the back of the knees. And then the rolled up blanket supports the ankles at the Achilles tendon so that the heels do not touch the floor. We want the knees to be slightly higher than the ankles. We don't want the heels to touch the floor, so they should feel supported or lifted up by the roll or whatever you use. And then we can start covering ourselves with our blanket. Before we lower ourselves down onto the bolster. Now find your cervical vertebra C7 again and make sure that the blanket or the bottom tip, the soft tip of the blanket supports your C7 vertebra. The top tip supports the skull under the occiput. And to make it a little bit more cozy or comfortable, we can grab the edges of this triangle and kind of fold them under and in the direction of the head and the neck. Depending on the stiffness of the blanket, this may or may not work very well. Just try and find a comfortable position. Then grab hold of your blocks or whatever you have to support your elbows in such a way that they come up, the props come up to meet your elbows and they really feel supported. There's no hanging in the shoulders, which may start to hurt over time. Remember that we're not looking for a stretch. We're looking for a very gentle opening in restorative yoga, and we want to support the body before we even reach an edge where we start to stretch. Don't forget to cover your eyes. I have my mask here. And then you cover yourself with your blanket, rest your elbows and rest your hands in your lap. And immediately you heard me sigh, which is a sign of the relaxation response being triggered in the body. I'm going to come out of the pose, but you're going to stay in the pose. Feel yourself supported by your props. Rest in the awareness of the flow of your breath. As we begin the restorative process, slowly moving the body from an upright position down toward the floor. And to help you make a transition from doing to being, I will play a mantra for you to lead you from sound to silence. Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Murali Mano Harananda Lala, Krishna Murali Mano Harananda Lala, Harananda Lala, Harananda Lala, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Govinda Govinda Gopala, Krishna Murali Mano Harananda Lala, Krishna Murali Mano Harananda Lala, Harananda Lala, Harananda Lala, Krishna, 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 Krishna. Now continue to rest in the awareness of your breath, until I bring you out of the pose. Feel your body supported by the props, by the earth, and savor this sacred silence. Slowly deepen your breath. Bring back movement to fingers and toes. ankles and wrists, arms and legs. And to come out of this pose, you could either roll onto one side or use your arms to push yourself back up to a seated position. If you want to roll to your side, first use your hands to place the blocks on the opposite side, so you're rolling away from the blocks and they're not in the way when you roll onto the side. And then let the eye pillow simply fall to the ground. Pause there for a moment, and then use your hands to push yourself up to a seated position with the head the last to come up. Or otherwise, place your hands on either side of your torso, of your pelvis. Bring your chin to your chest, engage the abdomen. Place your feet flat on the floor in between the rolled blanket and the knee support. And then use your hands to push yourself back up to a seated position. We meet here and we place all of our props to the side except for our two blankets. We move further down toward the earth and we take a slight back bend, which is a very simple setup, but a very powerful one. Sometimes you don't need much to have or to create a profound effect. It's a back bend, so there's a tiny bit of stretch, but not too much because our support won't be very high. And it's also an inversion. In restorative yoga, it belongs to the categories where our head is below the heart. And these poses, also in more active asana, are known to help calm down the brain and open the door to deep relaxation. For our support, we will use just one, or maybe two blankets for our supported back bend. And the way we will place them is by stacking them on top of one another. So the Uttanasana version, the small rectangle, we stack them on top of one another with the firm edges, the one with only one fold on top of each other, so that all of the layers are on the opposite side. And we place them so that we will be able to rest our backs, to keep it simple, over the support, thereby creating an even arch from tail to crown. And how do we do that? There's another bony landmark or anatomical focus point that I need to show you first, and that is the inferior angle of the scapula, or the bottom tip of the shoulder blade. The bottom tips of the shoulder blades will be resting right on this edge of the firm blanket side. And this will create the back bend. The head will simply rest on the floor. There's no head support here. And you'll know that you're in a back bend when you feel or see the lower ribs part slightly. have your eye cover nearby, and maybe I'm going to add one more support depending on where you will place your arms. You may need a bit of support at the top of the mat, and it will become clear in which situation this can come in handy. So we sit down on one side of the support, already going to grab my blanket to cover myself. Feet flat on the floor. And then you come down onto your elbows and slowly lower yourself down, making sure that the tips of the shoulder blades are on the blanket. And then you bring yourself back down. You can have the knees rest against one another as in constructive rest position, if that's comfortable for you. And now with regards to the arms, you could either have them out to the sides, horizontally, or more in a traditional Shavasana position, or as I like to do in this position, bring the arms overhead, and depending on the range of motion that you have in your shoulders, you may need additional support here because maybe your wrists won't touch the ground. So this is why I have 2 blocks here to support my wrists. Don't forget to cover your eyes. We won't be here very long, only a few minutes. And should you bring your arms overhead and your hands start to tingle after a while, then just bring the arms down by the sides, change your arm position. And otherwise, feel the support connecting your heart to the earth. And creating space for you to breathe deeply. And surrender to silence. To come out of this pose, we simply roll to one side. But before you do so, first choose which side you will be rolling towards. And then bring one arm overhead, the side you're going to roll onto. And then roll to that side, right or left, doesn't matter. And use the arm that you reached overhead as a pillow, so you can rest and pause there for a moment on your side. And then use both hands to push yourself back up to a seated position, with the head trailing, coming up last. You may begin to feel that you're moving toward a deeper state of relaxation, so we want to make sure that we don't coax the body back into activity. So take your time, be very mindful, try not to disturb your ease. And then for our final pose, Shavasana, we will use a combination of props that you may already be familiar with now, in part. One blanket will be our head support. You can create that same triangle that we created in the beginning for our supported Supta Baddha Konasana. Place it at the top edge of your mat. We will create a blanket roll with a second blanket to support our ankles, as we also did in Supta Baddha Konasana. So you can place that near the bottom edge of your mat. We will use a bolster to support our knees. And we will use two blocks, one on either side of the mat, to support our wrists. I'm going to angle the blocks a little bit because my arms will be out to the sides at an angle, and I want my wrist, or better, the crease of the wrist, to make one line with the edge of the block. So the arm goes perpendicular to the direction in which the block is laid. Or the other way around. The block follows the arm. Voila. Keep your eye cover nearby. And to come into Shavasana, have your blanket ready to cover yourself. First, place the knee support. Next, find the ideal position for your roll under the ankles, so the heels don't touch the ground. Start to cover yourself with your blanket. And now, come onto your elbows. Inhale, lengthen the back of the body. And exhale, slowly lower yourself down so that as much of the back body touches the mat as possible. Your knee and ankle support are still in place. You can start to cover yourself. Then find your C7 vertebra. And make sure the head support is in place, so the bottom part is supporting C7 and the top is supporting the occiput. And if you like, you can also, in this case, grab hold of the edges and kind of roll them under and in to create a bit more of a cradle for your head. But it doesn't always work that well, depending on your blanket. And then one more thing before we cover our eyes and lay down our hands. You can grab hold of the back of your skull with both hands. Kind of lengthen the back of the skull away from the feet. Place it back down onto your support. And then reach the arms up toward the ceiling and grab hold of the opposite wrist and then pull the arm up toward the ceiling one at a time, so you create even more space in between the shoulder blades. Cover your eyes and then blindly you can find your blocks and let your hands rest on the blocks. Take a deep breath and exhale into the earth that is carrying you, that has been carrying you your entire life, and that will continue to support you until you return back to it. Rest your awareness in the flow of your breath. I will guide you one more time with a mantra. That reminds us of our inner goodness and our inherent wholeness. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vashishyate Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Polish the mirror until you can see yourself with soft eyes compassionately. Step through the doorway, you hold the key. Pierce the veil of illusion, you are complete. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Enter the heart cave and you will see your unchanging, eternal, pure energy. Let go of desire and memory. Here and now is what matters. You are complete. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vashishyate. And now surrender completely to this supported, silent, sacred Shavasana. Slowly begin to deepen your breath. Bring back movement to fingers and toes. Move your ankles and your wrists, your arms and legs. Reach the arms overhead and stretch completely. Reach through the fingertips, reach through the toes. Then bend the knees one by one and place the feet flat on the mat or on the bolster. Choose which side you will roll onto and get the block out of the way. Reach one arm overhead and roll onto that side using the arm as a pillow. Pause there. And when you're ready, use your hands to push yourself back up to a seated position. The head is the last to come up. And then maybe grab your blanket and wrap it around you. For our final mantra together. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere on this sacred earth be happy and free. And during this mantra, you can hold your hands in Bhairava or Bhairavi mudra, Shiva or Shakti mudra. In Bhairava mudra, Shiva is held by Shakti, so the right hand lies on top and the thumbs are lightly touching one another, hands in our lap. Feminine counterpart, Bhairavi mudra, Shakti is held by Shiva, so left hand on top, thumbs lightly touching. And this mudra is both an anchor for the mind, and it is also symbolizing going beyond the fear of death. So choose whichever variation you prefer. Sit up straight and let's chant. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Bring your hands together in front of the heart in Anjali Mudra for one final sacred sound of Om. Exhale. Take a deep inhale. Keep your eyes closed for one more moment. And come back to the intention you set at the beginning of your practice. Exhale everything. Inhale, bring Anjali Mudra up toward the sky in front of the third eye. And exhale back to the heart. And finally, we return to the earth. Thank you for joining me for sacred Shavasana. Namaste.